Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Kaga. So today we'll continue the Gamer's Art of War. And today we're going to be looking at some of the influencing factors that you will find on the battlefield. As you can most certainly imagine, Sun Tzu, being a very renowned strategist in his day, had much to say on the various factors that should be accounted for when coming up with both one's strategy on the battlefield and one's strategy in a theater. I will premise this entire episode that some of these, and I will try to note which one is which, are better suited for individual tactics, some are suited towards unit tactics, and some are closer towards unit management. So for those of you that are looking for a better way to run your team battles units in World of Warships, this might be the very first episode that you will sink your teeth into and love. But I will note right now, because most of the things I'm going to be talking about are better displayed in World of Tanks, the video in the background will follow some World of Tanks games. I know it's going to be a little weird, but that being said, somewhere between Stronghold battles and, God, I still want to call them tank companies. Whatever they're called now. Clan Wars, the whatnot. All of these things apply, so you should all have something to take home from it. So without further ado, let's jump straight in and take care of business. Master Sun said, "The art of war is, then, governed by 5 constant factors to be taken into account in one's deliberations when seeking to determine the conditions in the field. These are the moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline." So that was a fair bit to consider right off the bat. And if you think about it, claiming that the way in which we govern war and how we go about executing it and planning it and overall our follow-through on it can be described in 5 quantities as kind of, it's both intuitive and yet we kind of want more. We really just want more than just 5, right? Well, I will say this and kind of prelude to this idea that Master Sun has so cleverly described the 5 general categories by which we must account, and then adds on to it later on in this section by certain questions when it comes towards the question that everybody inevitably wants answered is, who is to win, who is to lose. So when I'm looking at these quantities, and I will try to address them one at a time since there's a fair bit to talk about in each one, and we will temporarily pause this replay to get this whole process started. The moral law, as described by Sun Tzu, is reflected in this quote: "The moral law causes the people to be in complete accord with their ruler, so that they will follow him regardless of their lives, undismayed by danger." Now, I know that's definitely one of those precepts that everyone can write off right at the top of the hour with the classification that is 100% more for organized team battle events like team battles in warships, tank companies, strongholds, clan wars, whatever have you. But what we're talking about here is this subject of moral imperative, or in some cases a perception of correct authority, or that their authority is reflective of their abilities. At least this is what you can get with respect towards like wargaming type products in terms of who should be in command. And that is a very pertinent question when it comes to the commanders, is who is the correct commander, who has the ability to command. And when a unit has the correct commander, you will note that the people in the unit, when they act together, have a tendency to be able to produce far beyond what you would expect them otherwise to do. And I don't mean to just look at that last part by undismayed by danger. Let's face it, there is no tangible danger to any of us sitting in our chairs playing these games. But what it is the case is that when the commander says, take this point, if there is doubt about a commander's ability to forecast or to make the correct judgment call, there will be tangible delays in their abilities to get there on time, to get the stuff on target, all of these things. And there's many, many more ways in which this subject of the correctness of leadership can manifest itself, because these are very strongly related to the skills and abilities of the commander. And this all just gets back down to the fact that we're dealing with people. You can't escape that one fact. We are dealing with people. The commander is a huge part of this tactical organism that we call a team. And if they don't possess that imperative, then there are going to be issues that crop up. And I do mean they go far beyond what you might expect, like clan drama and whatnot. No, it's also stretches out onto the battlefield just in terms of abilities. And I think I've tried to beat that into a dead horse enough, so we'll move on to the next one, which should be significantly easier. Oh yes, and of course, significantly shorter to talk about. I hope. Heaven signifies night and day, cold and heat, the times and seasons. If I was to give character to this idea that Sun Tzu classifies under the word heaven, it would be the whims of nature, the environment, the things that we can't control. But there are things that no matter what we do, we must live with. They're things completely beyond our control. The time of day that something occurs, the weather at the time of the attack. And of course, we cannot forget whether or not we are fighting a day battle, a night battle, and ultimately certain factors which might become only apparent at certain times of the year in certain areas. And now I know that all of this stuff pretty much means nothing for a wargaming product, and I must specify for the wargaming.net products, because let's face it, World of Tanks and World of Warships, we won't talk about warplanes, both of these titles, you don't really have true night fights. You don't have the environmental effects that seasons can have on a map. You don't have these weird oddities of weather that affect the battlefield in rather interesting ways. Now, I will be the first to admit that even in Armored Warfare, which does a little bit of this, it's nowhere near the starkness that is evident in games like War Thunder, where all of these factors do play a role in how you can influence a particular battle space with a particular vehicle. And I will add the caveat that primarily applies in realistic battles for obvious reasons. Earth comprises distances great and small, danger and security, open ground and narrow passes, the chances for life and death. Now, I know just by looking at that, it kind of looks like a short list of the things that you want to have or not have in a particular battle space, but I will hasten, and I must hasten to add that it is so much more than that. This is about the idea that there are things that, while they at one instant can be outside of your control, but in the next they can be in your control. These are places that are desirable to be or undesirable to be. And this is all about controlling space. And one of the ways you can do this is simply by being there. And in this respect, I know many of you are familiar with the very westernized game of chess. When in this particular instance, chess is not a very good way to understand battle. In this instance, when you're looking at the geography, when you're trying to look at when and where things could come from, it's better to look at it from the perspective of Go, when you're really and truly vying for space and trying to assert control over that space to dominate your opponent in a very long-term strategic fashion. And in this respect, you lay all kinds of traps, you give up bait, you do all kinds of things that Sun Tzu would greatly appreciate from the perspectives of his experience that is reflected in his great work, The Art of War. And you're sitting there probably wondering, why am I talking about this little game of stones and occupying space when we're interested in, like the match you see right here in the AMX CDC in World of Tanks, where it's about bold action, it's about getting in there, thrusting the gun barrel down the enemy's throats, charging at them so close you can draw your sword and have at them. Well, yes and no. I will admit, sometimes those can be some of the most fun you can have in a video game. Those moments, I mean. But if you want to win, you must always be on the lookout for controlling space. And you'll see, like right now, how I predicted where that T-44 would end up going, and I picked the counter position so he couldn't actually destabilize the Allied position over there. Even if he was outnumbered there, if he had managed to crest that at full speed, he had a chance at coming out on top. My simple existing there and perceiving the space and forcing him into a position which was disadvantageous for him, both in terms of having lost the speed, but also in the fact that the ground around that particular hill is very much like a bog, so he would have a very hard issue regaining that speed, and thereby I have trapped him in there. He essentially, while I didn't get the finishing blow, you can certainly see how I was the one whose actions led to his death. And that is just one potential example that you can use to understand this idea of Earth as Sun Tzu describes and the possibilities contained within it. The commander stands for the virtues of wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. Now, admittedly, this is one of those that really only comes into its own when you start talking about unit dynamic, because for the most part, our benevolence and strictness in terms of online gaming is not necessary for individual success. But that being said, it is somewhat... those are things which you should take into consideration if you are involved in the more competitive forms of these games, like I keep coming back to team battles in World of Warships, Strongholds in World of Tanks, the Thunder League in War Thunder. You get the point. And these two quantities in particular can keep a unit together even through hard streaks, and they can also, if you are not observing these quantities, can lead to the dissolving of the unit. But enough about that, since we're not going to worry too much about the creation and termination of these units. Let's look at a few of the other quantities mentioned with this subject of the commander. Wisdom and courage. These are quantities that I think many of us will agree are in ever short supply in online gaming. You either find the people who are tactical geniuses who don't push their advantage, or you have people who are crazy brave and don't have a plan. And finding the balance of these two as individuals. And granted, you can, with the right commander, you can temper the individual urges that lead to the previous two situations I just described. But we won't worry too much about that. But these are very important things to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to talk about this idea called sincerity. Now, you can go on and on and on, like martial artists saying about the sincerity of the way I drive my tank, or the way I captain my ship, or the way I fly my plane. You won't find an audience with me. Sincerity, from where I sit, is the clarity of the communication. Is it clouded by anything? The clarity of your mind is so important in this, and your ability to communicate only that which is important and constructive to a battle is important. But to also do it in a way that is not just that constructive, but also what's the right word I'm looking for? Telling of what you feel is important. I mean, how many times have we seen, and I'm fairly certain everyone on this channel has seen this particular instance, is a battle, a sub-battle evolving in chat for no good reason, and you're probably sitting there, if you're still alive, pondering, hitting the exit button to the battle because you just don't want to look at it anymore. I know I have. Or, the other extreme where somebody takes offense at something that was said and they go and team kill the bastard. Both are not very constructive ways to end this well, to conduct battle. So having this form of sincerity is desirable. And to deal with the detractors of this line of thought who would like a absolute sincerity rather than what you might consider this conditional sincerity, is that no, people, you really should be doing this, and it ties into professionalism. And I know we're playing this to have fun, but just the same, if you're looking out for wanting to win, you should be maintaining a more professional demeanor throughout your entire discourse with both the game and its other players. But you must also be sincere, and I hope you don't try to go in the logical loop. Just find that happy balance that you are happy with and go from there. By method and discipline are to be understood as the marshalling of the army in its proper subdivisions, the graduations of rank among the officers, the maintenance of the roads by which supplies may reach the army, and the control of military expenditure. Now, I know a fair bit of that is in the realm of team dynamics, more so than not. But we can glimpse a little bit for individual play, and I will touch on the team dynamics just as a completeness of information. When it comes towards a properly organized and functioning military unit, having a proper chain of command really does help. It helps to have one person calling the shots and delegating it out to a bunch of people who know what they're doing and are trusted both by their subordinates and their immediate superiors. The last thing you want your unit commander having to deal with is micromanage every last piece on the board. Bad idea. It's not efficient, and if your opponents aren't doing exactly the same thing, you are hurting yourself, kind of like this leopard, before you get to help yourself, and that's never a good thing. I know that when it comes towards these types of games, we don't really have any roads or infrastructure really to maintain, but this does speak a little bit when I mention about the maintenance of roads. And when I get back to this idea of controlling space, if you look at your typical World of Tanks map, there's a lot of very specific corridors that people vie for control over. And there's a very good reason for that. These are very strategic locations on the map. And as a result, if a team cannot maintain control of them, especially if the team is using these roads, like the one in front of me, to force an advance in response to action somewhere on the other side of the map, then the last thing they really need is to get caught up here in a crossfire when they get hit in out of position and are not actually able to take control of the point that they want. And that is definitely something you can do in your games, is deny them control over these passages of transit, and then subsequently deny them control over the strategic locations they lead to. And of course, if anyone has already gotten into those positions, then so long as it's only like one or maybe even two, then what you've done is you've divided and conquered, so it's still worth doing. I mean, as an example, you have seen in this replay myself in this Type 4 Heavy, the Leopard prototype there, and the T-30 hold back about half a dozen tanks pushing up this strategic corridor. And it was just a matter of positioning, really and truly. Getting there in the right time to blunt their advance and then just make a mincemeat laughing at them in their face. And you can do the same thing. So I encourage you to do that in your games. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider giving it a like down below. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. This series will be ongoing for a fair bit, so please stay tuned every Tuesday and Friday for new installments to the series. So, I'd like to thank you for having bared with me for a fair bit of this video. I know it's been kind of going on and off for a bit, but I wanted to try out a new format for the videos. Do let me know what you think down below in the comments box about how this ended up. And if you have any suggestions about how this might work in the future installments, go ahead and leave those too. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Please stay tuned next week as we continue our adventures in World of Warships. And of course, I'd like to thank you for, again, having bared with me for 26 minutes at this point. And once again, thank you, and I'd like to bid you a happy and good weekend, and of course, good luck out there on the battlefield.